Okay, continuing with the true arrowheads, or so-called bird points. I've got about the same amount as last time. And full disclaimer, I didn't find any of these that I'll be showing. I do have a personal collection that I did find, but I'm not going to be showing that one. I've got that one packed away, and they aren't that many. So just to let you guys know, these were given to me, or I purchased them for the price of shipping. So I trust the guys that I got these from, and I think you'll see that these look authentic. But even if some of these, even if some of these might be modern, the vast majority are not, in my opinion. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and continue. This one's got some nice flaking on it. The edge sharp in some areas, and other areas a little bit dull. I think a lot of these tips are probably use damage, but with the passage of time, weak areas break off in the ground, so they may not be use damage. And again, these are from the Southwest or Texas. I don't have specific locations on where these were found. And these are all from several different collectors. I didn't get them all from one guy. But they're all kind of mixed up. So I don't even know who I got each one from now. But it doesn't much matter. These are very good study pieces, without having to be too concerned about where they're from exactly. As a flint knapper, I'm primarily interested in what the flaking can tell me about how they were getting these things shaped and thinned down and sharpened. The sharpness of the blades is very important to me as far as technique goes and how they were doing it in the past. These little projections are very sharp on this one. This one is extremely thin, one of the thinnest true arrow points I have, and I think it's a Sabinal point. Okay, but without the base, I can't know for sure. A Sabinal base is going to have something similar to this one. So complete, it would look probably something like that, with very narrow notches, or somewhat narrow. I think you get the idea. And I can't tell if that barb was, or that, yeah, that barb was pointy or not. It looks like it may be broken off, but it also looks squared off. You can tell this was made on a flake. It's what they call unifacial. Some of these might have some adhesive on one side because they were displayed at one point. This one looks like it has some base damage in the haft. Looks like a Sabinal point also. Kind of curved, made on a flake probably. Most of these are made on flakes, but some of them are made on thick flakes, and you can take the curve out. When nappers talk about something made on a flake, what they mean is it has a lot of the flake characteristics still on it, either an original surface or the original curve of the flake, or both. You know what I mean? I've got these kind of separated by type. I think these are scalorns here. That one I just showed, and this one here, and the next one's coming up. Scalorns are very common. The serrations on this are distinctive. You know, you can see the primary edge is pretty straight, and then the serrations, or the little protrusions, stick out from the main edge. And I've seen on completed points a very neat row of these, not only on scalorns but on other types as well. And it has some obvious impact damage. Or what I think is obvious. Could also be just a snap, but it looks like impact damage, with impact damage on the ear as well. Impact damage on the tip, otherwise it would be perfect. Nice little barb there on the serrations. I kind of lingered on that one because it's very interesting. Yeah, and some of these look reworked, but sometimes they were made in this size. Especially in the desert areas where some of the tribes use very small points. They were actually made this way to begin with, and they're not worked down. If I know the name of the point style, I'll tell you if I know for sure. But like on this one, I don't know for sure what it is. You know, a Perdiz type point with a flat base is sometimes called a bonum, but I have no idea. Well, I have some idea, but I don't know what this one would be typed as. And the more I get into researching points and all that, the less I'm concerned about what the actual type name is. I would rather know the age and the way it was hafted. Are there any examples of existing hafts where they're still on the foreshaft or the arrow shaft or at lattice shaft? So I'm primarily concerned with how they were used and not really what they are named. And this would obviously have, well, not obviously, but probably a delicate pointed needle tip. Probably something similar to this one. I haven't been checking the edges, so because they're pretty consistently mid-range sharpness. If I can feel extra sharpness, I'll tell you. This actually is pretty sharp. I noticed it when I picked it up. That's what kind of reminded me. This one is very sharp. Most likely heat treated. I would say 90% chance. Maybe because of the color, but it just feels like it is, which is a subjective assessment, but it just feels like it is heat treated. Some of these Perdiz type points have twists in the base and the stem, I mean, twisted stems. So when you haft it, it'll be, skewed to one side. If the notch in the end of the foreshaft is, let's say, perfectly horizontal to the screen, the blade will be canted slightly. Just a small detail. It probably doesn't matter, and didn't matter to the original makers of the Arrowhead, but it's just one of the interesting things about hafting some of these points. Very sharp. Made on a flake, very thin. One of the thinnest that I have. Actually, that's probably the thinnest arrow point that I have. Minute flaking. Little serrations. Interesting material. It's not translucent like a lot of this material. I don't know what it is. I might have some of this in my stash of rocks, but it's kind of an unusual material. Just the base or stem. These Perdiz points can have pretty long stems sometimes. Now, I don't know, this might not be a Perdiz, it might be a Livermore type, but you can see the difference in the length of the stems. Why do they have long stems in some cases? I don't know. I do not know. I do know that they're stronger in the haft. The longer the base, or the longer the stem, the stronger the haft. It is possible I didn't haft it all the way to the top where the barbs begin. It could have only been hafted up to that point. It didn't have to be hafted all the way up to the barbs. That's one possibility. Although I have not seen actual examples that would indicate that. Most of the examples I've seen, the entire stem is hafted. Another long stem. Pretty much in line with the other one. Now, can these be used as drills like this? I suppose so, but it would need to be a little bit sharper, I would think. Think that could be used as a drill or something? Maybe. I've heard stories that sometimes the arrow shafts were actually drilled using the stems on the Perdiz, but I don't buy that argument. It's just too risky to snap off the stem when you do it. Why would you want to risk snapping the stem on your pretty arrowhead that you just made, that you just spent maybe an hour on in some cases? Now the material on this, I wish I knew what it was. I would love to have a bunch of this. You know, people would call this a jasper, I guess, because it's a exotic color chert. An exotic color of chert is usually called a jasper, right? That's how they make the distinction, just the coloration of it. But I would love to have this type of material. It looks like it flakes very well, and I'd be curious to see if it needs heat or not. My guess is these are heated. Like I said before, my guess would be these are all heat treated, but it'd be interesting to find out. I like the serrations, the little minute serrations on the barb, on the forward edge. Those are cool. There's a name for these downturned or points with the downturned barbs on them. They might be called Diablo points. I'm not sure. Random flake patterns, but they look very cool. Very well made. It's difficult to get the shape just right with such little flaking. It's just minimal flaking. They were just popping off flakes and shaping them at the same time. There really isn't a lot of edge retouch on this one. Just straight pressure flaking. Pretty straightforward, nothing too intricate or time consuming. But the shape, it's amazing how symmetrical they would get some of these. Even though it's broken and stuff, you can't really see the whole thing. Just the blade itself, symmetrical from one side to the other, is pretty amazing. To me, anyway. This is probably a preform. The barb and the stem look too thick for me, or to me, it still looks too thick or too wide. Looks like it could have been refined down a little bit more, especially when you compare these barbs. If you look at these, they have a lot of minute flaking on the forward edge to shape them. This one doesn't have very many flakes. So that's how I think this is a preform. Might have been snapped during the notching process or shaping process of the stem, but I don't know. Very narrow neck. So it's hard to say if these were broken in the haft. Probably were. Or just, you know, accidentally broken. It doesn't take much when you're holding a bunch of arrows to snap off the arrowhead. Even before you get to use the arrow. You know what I mean? If you don't take care of these with the narrow necks, if you let the arrow brush up against any objects while you're traveling, it'll just snap the arrowhead right off. I have a lot of this type of material. It's very easy to work once it's heat treated. It can be worked raw, but it's difficult to do nice notches and nice serrations like this on a raw piece. It can be done, but it's just very time consuming. You have to get the platforms just right. This looks like impact damage on the tip. This is a Toya point. This would be classified as a Toya point here, but I think I've seen points like this from the Spiral Mounds area in Oklahoma. So these are not all going to be in Texas as far as the range of where you would find these. That's probably impact damage both on the ear and the tip. This was an interesting study because, why wouldn't it break across the notches? Why did it break up higher? It's kind of a curious break. I guess it goes to show that notching isn't always going to weaken the point there at the neck. Now this one is quartzite, and this may be a point from Mexico. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Some of these might be from across the border in Mexico. I haven't noticed very many twisted blades on these bird points or true arrowheads. Same material. Very easy to work once you get used to it or heat this material. So you can make all kinds of shapes. I'm going to speed it up because I'm running out of time here. This is probably a Livermore style, but it's hard to tell with so much of it missing. But still, it's still interesting to look at the way they develop the blades and the serrations on some of these. Another nice base. These are called Washitaws around here, but they could be also classified as Pueblo side notch or other types in different areas. But if they're found near here in West Texas, they're called Washita. And types like this exist in California as well, and they're called by different names over there. Just a blade snapped off. Who knows what that one was? Could be any number of different points. This does look like it has a notch. If it has a notch in the bottom, it's usually called a harrow around here, or a Toya. If it has no notch, it's a Washita. But again, these are found with bases that are notched and unnotched in the Pueblo side notch areas and in California as well, and Arizona, Nevada. All the desert areas have similar styles of points. Sorry, I haven't been keeping track of what is sharp and what is not. I think you can tell which ones are sharp. This one is very, very sharp. And I think you can tell when I'm moving or flipping the point, you can see the thinness of the edge. If it's got a real thin edge, chances are it's sharp. There's very few that have thin edges and are feeling dull. This one is very sharp all the way down. So if they look like this, you can pretty much guarantee that it's sharp. Sorry, I haven't been touching the edges and assessing the edges very much. There's a twist in that blade. Interesting material. I've got a few more that are petrified wood coming up. I know some guys have huge collections of petrified wood points, and those are really cool. I don't have that many. And I get asked a lot to work petrified wood in videos. I don't have very much of it, and I really don't like working it, so I've been putting it off. But I think I have some coming up in the rock challenges. It's very sharp. I organized all my materials in the rock challenges about a year or so ago. I've got all my boxes stacked up. This might be a Friley, or it could be Livermore. This is kind of thick. This is one of the thickest arrow points I have. Another blade. Who knows what it is? Okay. And let's see. This one is petrified wood. Probably a Perdiz. Maybe even a Sabinol. It just depends on the stem. Again, these edges feel a little bit rounded off or not very sharp. Even though it looks thin, I don't know why, but a lot of these petrified wood points have edges that feel kind of rounded and not razor sharp. This is rounded too. It could be also the way it was stored. They're all kind of stored together. I don't know how long the previous owners had these and how much they were handled in the past. Handling and storage together can round off a lot of sharp edges. This one's definitely dull. Nice and thin though. So it probably doesn't matter too much how sharp that one is. All right, it's already 30 minutes. These are the last two. Pretty straightforward. Nice material. Okay.